So let's look at the actual poem now. And we have, I see, a translation here as well. I'm not sure whose translation is this. C.D. Johari. Anyways, you'll find a lot of translations on the internet. So, Qasidat al-Burda, the ode of the mantle. Yeah, the Burda, the mantle, the cloak, the shawl. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad al-Fatih lima ughliq wal khatim lima sabaq nasir al-haqq bil haqq wal hadi ila siratika al-mustaqim wa ala alihi haqqa qadrihi wa miqdarihi al-azim. Amma ba'd. So, let us go into just the first part of the Burda. So the first chapter in the Burda is divided into 10 chapters. Okay, 10 chapters. And the first part of the Burda is Fil Ghazali wa Shakwa al-Gharam. And it means in loving and expressing your love and desire for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And usually the poets would always in Arabic start their poem in that genre, in that methodology, which is of expressing love. So he starts by saying, Amin tazakkuri jiranin bizi salami madashtadam an jaramin muqlatin bidami. He says, is it the remembrance of the people of Zi Salam that causes your tears to mix with blood as they flow from your eyes? Is it the remembrance of the people of Zi Salam? What's making you cry, in other words? Is it remembering the people of Zi Salam that is making tears of blood come down your eyes? And tears of blood, it's a figure of speech, but the Arabs would usually say tears of blood when they would cry very seriously for someone. When the love and the yearning and the pain was real, they said he's crying tears of blood. So he's saying, what is it that's making my eyes cry tears of blood? Is it the yearning for the people of Zi Salam? Now what is Zi Salam? Zi Salam was a place near Medina, near al-Madina al-Munawwara. It's not of any importance and significance today, so we wouldn't relate to it. But back in those days, Zi Salam was what in our time would be like Jeddah. It was the gateway to Medina. So the caravans of the Hujjaj, they used to come on the camels in those days, and they travel and they travel and they travel in the desert. It's like never ending in the desert. But when they arrive in Zi Salam, they know that they've arrived near Medina. Because when they arrive in Zi Salam, that means Medina is just around the corner. The city of the Prophet is around the corner. So that's what he says. He said, is it the yearning for the neighbors of Zi Salam, land of Zi Salam, that makes you cry like that? Or has the wind come from Kazima and the light shining from there? Kazima again also was a mountain near Medina. So when the Hujjaj would see Kazima, the mountain of Kazima, they know they are near Medina. So again, he mentions these landmarks of Medina, landmarks of the beloved. He said, is it the village of Zi Salam, or is it the light from the village of Zi Salam, or is it the wind from Kazima that is making me so emotional today? So they don't usually, the Arabs, when they write love poems, they don't immediately mention the name of the beloved. That's their style. They don't mention who they are referring to directly. They do that very later in the poem. They just mention the city, the place, the signs. It's called Tawriya. They indicate towards them until they finally mention who they are actually talking about. So they'll be like, oh, I'm missing somebody in Singapore, how much I miss Singapore, But they're not really missing Singapore. They're missing somebody there. But they're not mentioning who. They're just talking about Singapore and that bridge and that boat, all that is just actually about a person. But they use these terms. So that's what he's saying, and that village, and that mountain, and that around Medina. But it's all referring to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because when you love somebody, you love everything related to them. So if we love Rasulullah, we love Madinatul Munawwara, we all want to be in Medina, not because it's called Medina, it's a city, but because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is there. And then he says, وَمَا لِعَيْنَيْكَ إِن قُلْتَ اكْفُفَا هَمَتَا وَمَا لِقَلْبِكَ إِن قُلْتَ اسْتَفِقْ يَمِي. So he said, what is it with your eyes that you tell it to stop crying, and it doesn't stop, it continues crying. He said, what's wrong with my eyes? Despite my attempt to stop it, it continues flowing. And what's wrong with my heart? The more I order it to, calm down, it just becomes more and more excited. And that's a sign of love. So the more you tell your heart to calm down, the more it's just getting more and more excited. And that's a sign of love. And then he mentions that لولا الهوى لم ترد دمعا على طرق دمعا على طلل ولا أرقت لذكر الباني ونعلمي. He says that then he now no more questions, but now he gives answer. He said, indeed it is love. Indeed it is love. If it was not for love, then the tears would not have flowed down my cheeks, nor would have I become emotional at the mention of the mountain and the trees. Because Zi Salam was a place of trees, the village of Zi Salam, because Salam is a tree. So he said, first he was saying, is it the wind from the mountain? Is it the trees of Zi Salam? Is it? That's a style of poetry. First they ask questions. Why am I so emotional? Why are my eyes crying even though I tell it to stop? Why is my heart excited even though I tell it to calm down? Why am I thinking of the mountain? Why? And then now he gives the answer. He says, لَوْلَا الْهَوَى. Yes, it is love. Were it not for love, my eyes would not have flowed. And were it not for love, I would not have been emotional at the mention of the mountain and the tree. So now he's mentioning and highlighting the love, and then he says that indeed it is a love that I cannot deny. He says, and when the witnesses of my love are the two lines of tears on my cheeks. He says, my love is real, and the proof of my love are these lines of tears that are going down my cheeks. These are my witnesses. Because somebody asked, what's the proof? What's your proof that you really love? He said, well, these are the proofs. Look at the tears down my eyes. Of course, I'm trying to explain this in English, and remember, the beauty of a poem is in its poetic, structure in the language it was written. So my English explanation can never do justice to the beauty of how it actually sounds in Arabic. Because that for an Arabic speaker, the romantic, tone in it, and the emotional tone in it, and the sweetness in it, and the sincerity, that can only be understood if you understand Arabic. But nevertheless, we still want to understand what we sing and what he's saying. And then he says, "Na'am sara tayfu man ahwa fa'arraqani." He said, yes, the visions of my beloved come to me at night time and keep me awake. And indeed, love, it is the pain of love that has overtaken me. Indeed, I am in pain, but I'm not sick. It's not an illness, it's not a disease. It is the pain of love. My sickness is the pain of my love. And if somebody is going to condemn you for the love, he says, Ya la'imi fil hawa al-uzri ma'ziratan minni ilayka wa law ansafta lam talumi. He said, oh, you who condemns me for this love, please excuse me. Please excuse me. And indeed, if you were a fair person, you wouldn't blame me. You would not be blaming me. It's like the lover is saying that, because you're not in love, so you don't understand why I'm feeling like this and why I'm so depressed and so emotional and so, if you were in love, you wouldn't have done that. And he says, if you were fair, you wouldn't condemn me. Meaning that if you also were experiencing that love, you would then excuse my condition. You will know how it feels. But you are not separated from any loved one. You are not distant from any loved one. So you cannot feel what I am feeling right now. Right? مَحَطَّنِ النُّصْحَ لَكِنْ لَسْتُ أَسْمَعُهُ. You try to advise me, but lovers don't listen to any advice. إِنَّ الْمُحِبَّ عَنَ الْعُزَّالِ فِي صَمَمِ. Lovers don't listen to anybody's advice. You know that, right? People, a guy loves a girl, boy loves a girl, girl loves a boy. They don't listen to mommy, they don't listen to daddy, they don't listen to ustad, they don't listen to nobody. Sometimes they don't even listen to Allah and His Prophet, Right? I love him. Khalas. So lovers, I mean, that's the condition of love. Lovers, when they are enamored by somebody, they don't listen to nobody. Advice of nobody, So he's saying to the people who may advise him, he said, oh, who's trying to advise me? Save your breath. Lovers don't listen to nobody. So don't come and tell me this and that. It's not going to work, But of course, this love is a pure love. This is the love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is not the love of a woman or love of anything else. And nowadays you have people in the West, love of a dog, love of a cat, I miss my dog so much, and they're crying. And, this is greater than all these things, This is the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the purest love that can be there. And people have weird things that they love, and they cry for these things. It's amazing how they become emotional. But when it is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then they are not emotional. Then they don't cry. Then they don't sing. Then they don't yearn. So when it comes to expressing love for Rasulullah, they want to put down that expression. And that doesn't make sense. That's the love that we should be expressing the most. Why? Because He is the one that we are supposed to love the most. Right? لَا يَمِنُ أَحَدُكُمْ حَتَّى أَكُونَ حَبَّ لِوَالِدِهِ وَلَدِهِ النَّاسِ يَجْمَعِينَ. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, none of you has iman until he loves me more than he loves his parents, he loves his children, and all people. So He is more beloved to us than anybody else, more than our fathers and mothers. So of course He is the one for whom we should be expressing the most amount of love. And we don't need dalil for that. We don't need proofs for that. I have never heard anybody who came to an alim or a ustaz or a mufti and say, Shaykh, I want to say I love you to my mom. Is it allowed in Islam? Have you ever heard a Shaykh ask, somebody ask a Shaykh, am I allowed to say I love you to my mom? No. Nobody asks that question. Why? Because this is just the most natural thing to do. They don't want a fatwa from anybody. So why is it that when you want to say I love you to Rasulullah, then people want evidences. They want proof, dalil, quote me an ayah, quote me a hadith. Why is it when you want to show love for Rasulullah, people want proofs? Is it unnatural to love him? Or is it the most natural thing for a mu'min? So why is it when you love your child, you say I love you to my child, you don't ask a fatwa for that first. In fact, you don't even care what any mufti will say. If you love your child, you're going to say to your child, I love you, my son. Khalas. You don't care what halal, haram, ayah, hadith, you don't care what anybody has to say. Because it's love. So why is it when it comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, nowadays, many Muslims have developed this sensitivity. Can we say that? Can we not say that? Can we honor his birth? Should we not honor his birth? You don't think about that when anybody else. But when it comes to Rasulullah, so that is just a deception of the shaitan to curtail our love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We shouldn't hold back. We shouldn't have any inhibitions when it comes to loving him. We should express our love for him sallallahu alaihi wasallam without any fear or any shaming. So Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. And then he carries on to the second chapter. And the second chapter is talking about now, as I said, warning himself from his nafs. Because he also realizes that his separation from the Prophet ﷺ, his distance from him, spiritual distance, more than the physical distance, is because of his own sins. There's one thing to talk about Rasulullah, But it's another thing to realize how far you are from Him through your own sins. So here he bashes himself, his nafs. So he says, indeed, but although I praise Him, I love Him, but indeed my nafs keeps me away from Him. My nafs refuses to come on the straight path, even though I have received the warnings of old age and white hair. My nafs does not want to come right on the straight path, even though I have received 2 warnings from Allah already. What are those warnings? Old age and white hair. Because that's a sign that your time of going is coming. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu used to pay a guy to come and remind him of death every day. He used to actually pay this man. This man would come to him and say, Ya Umar al-Maut, O Umar, remember your death. One day when the man came, Sayyidina Umar said, there's your payment, don't come again. I don't need you anymore. So he said, why not? He said, now when I look into the mirror every morning, that reminds me of my death. Because my bones have become weak, my skin has become wrinkled, my hair has become white. So now I don't need you to remind me of death. When I look in the mirror, that's a reminder enough to me that my time to go is coming. And that's why the most corrupt people on earth are those who carry on doing haram even in their old age. People are old, but they are still doing all kinds of wrong deeds. That's a person who has absolutely no fear of Allah. Young people, one can understand because they feel, oh, well, I have a long life to live, and inshallah, I will make tawbah, and I will come right when I'm old, I'll go for Hajj, But somebody is like 80 years old, and they are still stealing money, and they are still robbing people, they are still lying, they are still zina. It's like, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Is this person have absolutely no fear of Allah? His one leg is in the grave already, and he's still doing these things. So that's scary. So Imam Busiri says, my nafs doesn't want to come right, even though it has received the warnings of old age and white hair. And he says, and it has prepared nothing for a guest that's coming to visit me very soon. And I have prepared nothing for a guest that's going to come visit me very soon. What's the guest? Maut. Death is coming to me very soon, and I have prepared nothing for that guest, which means good deeds. And then he says that, talking about sins, he says that, and your nafs is like a baby. Your nafs is like a baby, and if you neglect it, it will keep on, suckling to its mother and never stop. Now he's giving an example here of a baby that's breastfeeding on the mother. So if you don't stop the baby from breastfeeding, he will carry on breastfeeding when he's 3, 4 years or 5 years if you don't stop him. So every mother knows that there comes a time when you have to stop your baby from breastfeeding and you have to just pull him off, pull her off, right? So he says that's what you have to do with your nafs. He said as long as you're going to just feed your nafs, it's not going to stop. There needs to come a time where you need to pull it off. So he compares the nafs to a baby that must be pulled off from the wrong path. Just stop. And he says, فَصْرِفْ هَوَاهَا, and do not listen to the machinations of the nafs. Do not listen to the desires of your ego. Because when your ego takes over you, it destroys you and defiles you. As the Sufis said, you should ride your ego. Your ego shouldn't ride you. You should control your nafs, and not your nafs control you. Right? So when you control your nafs, you can use it for what is halal. There are halal things that Allah allows for the pleasures of the nafs. You allow it. But when the nafs controls you, then it will do whatever it wants. And then he says, how many times does the nafs beautify an action for you while it is a killer for your soul? And it is the poison in the nice food. Meaning that the nafs sometimes beautifies for you certain actions which are actually killers. Which actually can destroy you, but the nafs makes it look nice. And he gives the example here of poison in food. Somebody gives you beautiful, it's tasty, but there's poison inside of it. So that's the trick of the nafs. Don't follow it. And then he says, وَاسْتَفْرِقِ الدَّمْعَ مِنْ عَيْنٍ قَدْ امْتَلَأَتْ. And therefore, what are the solutions here? Now he says, then let the tears flow from eyes that have been filled with haram. وَالْزَمْ حِمْيَةَ النَّدَمِ. And constantly be in a state of regret and tawbah for your bad deeds. Always be in a state of nafsul lawama, always regretting whatever wrong you have done. Don't be arrogant, don't be free. Oh, I'm good, don't do anything wrong, everything is good with me. Always be in a state of regret, in the sense that always be regretful for any wrong that you may have done or you are doing. And then he says, وَخَالِفِ النَّفْسَ وَالشَّيْطَانَ وَعَصِّهِمَا. And disobey the nafs and disobey the shaitan, and never ever follow their advice, because they are not sincere advisors. The nafs and the shaitan, they advise you, they give you advice, but they are not sincere advisors. They are bad friends. In life we have bad friends, they give us bad advice. He said the nafs and the shaitan are like that. They are bad friends. Don't listen to their advice, because they want to destroy you. Your bad friend is like, oh, come on, man, let's smoke this, or let's try this out, drugs, if you follow the advice of the bad friend, he will destroy you, like he had destroyed himself in the first place. So don't listen to them, he says. Nafs and shaitan, they are your enemies, they are not your friends. And then he says in the end, Astaghfirullah min qawlin bila amalin. Laqad nasabtu bihi naslan lizi uqumi. I seek Allah's forgiveness from talk, but no action. He said, I talk all these things, but I don't follow any of this. I'm saying, don't follow now, but I'm following. He says, Astaghfirullah min qawlin bila amalin. I seek for Allah's forgiveness from talking, but not acting on these beautiful words. And this is his humility. I mean, you are the pious man, but that's humility. Indeed, I have attributed children to somebody who doesn't have children. He gives an example of that. It's like attributing children to somebody who doesn't have kids. So the example of a person who talks a lot of good things but doesn't do anything good is like attributing kids to somebody who in reality doesn't have kids. So it's not real, it's fake. And then he says, indeed, I order myself to do good, but I don't practice it. I order myself to be on the straight path. I order others to be on the straight path, but I myself am not on the straight path. And indeed, I did not prepare anything for my death, and I did not pray anything but my fard. And that, in his time, he regretted that. He said, and he didn't pray anything but my fard. In today's time, people don't even pray fard. He's regretting that I have not prepared anything for my death. I have not prayed anything except the fard. And he regrets that. The only prayer I make is the fard. I have not made any nafil, any extra. He regrets that. And as I said, in today's time, people don't even make fard. In fact, in today's time, if somebody can just make their fard salah every day, 5 times a day, mashallah. We don't even expect nafil anymore, If people can just make their fard, mashallah, But in his time, he says that. And that's his humility. So he ends with that. Then he goes to the 3rd chapter, which is Fi Madh al-Nabi. And now he's becoming a bit more explicit about his love story in the 3rd chapter. And he says, indeed, zalamtu sunnata man ahya az-zalama ila an ishtaqa qadamahu ad-durra min warami. Indeed, I have been unfair to the sunnah of my Prophet, the one whose feet would be swollen from his prayer in the night time. Now compare that to the line before. Indeed, I have prepared nothing for my death except, and I have prayed nothing but my fard. But he's not comparing to us today, who don't even pray fard. He's comparing it to Rasulullah. He said, indeed, I have been unfair to the sunnah of the one who would pray his entire night until his feet would be swollen. Rasulullah has no sins. He's guaranteed Jannah. He holds the key to Jannah. Yet he would pray for the entire night until his feet are swollen. He says, me, I just make fard and go sleep. He said, where am I to him? How can I claim to be on his sunnah? I'm so far away from his sunnah. And indeed, he said, and he is the one, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, used to tie a stone to his stomach out of hunger. Even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala offered him the mountains of gold, and he refused it, because he is not interested in the dunya. He said, indeed, he was not interested in the dunya, yet the dunya was created for his sake. Allah, were it not for Rasulullah, Allah would not have created the heavens and the earth, because he is the purpose of creation, so that he can come in this world and guide the people to the straight path. Otherwise, it will be a movie with no star. Right? So it was pointless. This whole universe was set up as a stage for the star. That is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like, today you set up this whole thing. I am the main speaker, the mic, and now imagine if this whole thing was set up, but I don't turn up, or I'm not there. So it becomes pointless. It becomes meaningless. So the whole world is like that. The whole world was set up for the coming of the chief guest, the main speaker. Who is that? Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other prophets who came before him, they were, the speakers who come before the main speaker. Right? In a program we have the other speakers. Some of them are introducing the next speaker. Some of them are introducing the subject. Some of them are just taking your time before the main guy comes, right? And then comes the main speaker. All the prophets were like that. They came before him preparing the world for his coming. That's why he said, there was no prophet except that he spoke about me. He said, no prophet came to this world except he spoke to his people about me. Introduced me. So that's exactly what I'm saying now. So then comes Rasulullah into this world. And the stage becomes relevant now. So he says, yet although Allah created the whole dunya for him, he was not interested in the dunya. He would walk around hungry and be so hungry that he had to tie a stone to his stomach to contain his hunger. Now we also get hungry. But have you ever been so hungry that you had to actually tie a stone or something to your stomach to contain your hunger? We haven't. Alhamdulillah, we haven't, I remember once I was on a long flight and the people who invited me forgot to book a halal meal. Never do that. It was a long flight to some other country across the oceans and they did not book a halal meal. So it turns out the food, nothing is halal on the plane. So I basically have like 17 hours without any food, So I just had to tighten my belt. That's what I did, I just had to and I was really my stomach is now, and I just tightened my belt, because there's nothing I can eat here, on this plane. Yeah, so I did that, and the only reason I'm mentioning that is because when I did that, I remembered Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is perhaps the only time in my life I will get a little bit near to what he used to experience. When he will be so hungry, he takes a stone, he takes a rope, and he ties a belt on his stomach out of hunger. And who? The one for whom Allah created the dunya and everything in it. But he had no interest in it. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.